Warning: the following interview contains stories and language that may be unsuitable for younger audiences. The purpose of this interview is not to glorify violence or death, but to share the experiences of American citizens who answered their nation's call. Viewer discretion is advised. The Vietnam War. One of the most controversial conflicts in modern times. Politicians, military, police, and citizens were fighting battles at home and abroad. It was a conflict that split our nation's heart in two. However, one thing that stayed united was the brotherhood overseas. American boys were drafted to add more manpower to the U.S. military operations being conducted in Vietnam. Most servicemen were unaware of the turmoil at home and what had become a political war. Yet, to them, they were performing a selfless act. They were answering the call of their nation. Specialist 5th Mickey D. Hoggard enlisted in 1969 with H Troop, 17th Cavalry Mechanized Infantry with the United States Army. He served until 1973, when injuries he sustained no longer allowed him to serve. During his service, he was awarded a Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and several other citations and medals. His bravery in action and defense of his country are what makes him an American treasure. Sit back and listen to his story of bravery on this edition of Arkansas Valor.
My name is Mickey D. Hoggard. I was in the United States Army, and I was a Spec 5 when I discharged. That was a good one. I was about to be drafted, so instead of becoming infantry, I volunteered and become mechanized infantry. I still went to the boonies and everything, but at least I got to ride.
Instead of walking all
yes.
miles.
I was south of Chicago. I was at Hammond, Indiana, next door to Gary, 40 miles south of Chicago.
So you were
Well, I was born here and raised there. That's what that was. I felt like that was the thing to do at the time. Some of my friends that I graduated school with, one of them went to the Marines, one made retired out of the Air Force, and another one, he has spent a couple years in the Navy. And I mean, we all ran around together, so we all just up and done it. My first days are, oh yes, get off of that bus, you meatball. Hey, you spaghetti heads, get over here, line up. That's our first day. That's the way that we was treated. Not none of this pansy stuff that they do now. They're not allowed to call you names like they did then. And as I look back on it now, it was funny, and I just let it go. You know, because they done it to get you stimulated to train you, to take abuse to train you to, when you got mad, be ready to defend yourself, you know. And so that's what I seen. Yeah, it was. Guys went in with beards and long hairs, you know, and he'd call them hippies, and they would remember you if you had the long hair, if you had a beard, because they nicknamed you then, and that name stuck with you for 8 weeks. And how they could remember that, I do not know. Out of all the guys that was come through there, they could remember everyone's first day. I said, whoa. I said, that was very interesting. First, I was scared. I said, what did I get into, you know? But then as it went on, I began to realize, you know, this is going to make you a man. This is going to make you a better person. This is what life is about, your ups and your downs and your struggles. And as it went on, it was hard, and then it began to get easier. Once you got into the lifestyle and everything, after about 6 weeks, it began to get easy because you're already muscled up, in tune, and you know what to expect. But when you first get there, the first few weeks, you don't know what to expect, you know. When they say attention, you do it, you snap and you salute. And they say, that ain't right. Get your arm up, so, get your hand, so. I mean, they were strict on everything. Your shirt button had to be lined up with your zipper, you know. Your belt buckle had to be just right. And if you didn't shave that morning, you would dry shave that afternoon. Only one. Sergeant First Class Dawson. He had just gotten his orders to go back to Hawaii. He was done. And that's the only one I can remember their names, because he was, our last 2 weeks of training, he was up there with us, socializing with us, talking with us, and he was an MP before he became a DI. And then as he was going back to Hawaii, he was going to go back into being an MP, and he was getting promoted. So he said that was good. I set my mind up. See, I had played football for 4 years in high school. So I set my mind up that, hey, I've got to go through with this. Because at that time when I went in service, I was married, and my wife was expecting her first child, our first child. And so I had to make it, or I was deadbeat then, you know. So I had made my mind up that I was going to do it, and I knew I could if I wanted to. And you just had to make your mind up that you wanted to, not like nowadays, if you don't want to, you can just get out. That's not it. You got to want to do this. And John Wayne was my hero, right? Cavalry. He was always in the cavalry or in the military, but he was in Navy and in the Marines. But I looked up to John Wayne, and a man's got to do what a man's got to do. That's it, you know. For boot camp, I was at Fort Leonard Wood. First AIT, I was at Fort Leonard Wood, automotive mechanic. Then from there, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky as went to AIT there, advanced AIT for track mechanic. And then from there, it's simple. Upon graduation day, our DI came out, our drill instructor. He came out of the room and he said, everybody that's 16 and under over here, everybody 17 and over here. Congratulations, you're going to Vietnam. Well, that's where we was going, and they were going to Germany. And so I went to Vietnam, spent 13 months, and then I went to Germany after that. Spent 32 months it was in Germany.
I'm sure that was a little, I say it was a vacation, those were turbulent times too, but I'm sure it was a little bit more relaxed than Vietnam.
Oh yeah, it was. In fact, it was very much relaxed, and they about the time I got out, they started really getting. They didn't know whether to go hard or go soft, and it was a mess. And I was glad I got out when I did, because so many things had changed over the years. When we landed, it was night. We landed in Cameron Bay, and we processed in, and there was 5 of us in that whole big Quonset hut. There was 5 of us that went to the same company, and while we was there processing in, they came under fire, and we had no weapons. We're all newbies and FNGs, if you will, and so we don't know what to do. We just sit there, and finally the commander that was doing the processing said, "It's okay. They got us. They got them under cover. They got them taken, and it was all right." So then, during the night, we went to Chulai. This is where I went to. I was stationed. I finished. Well, I was at Chulai for 13 months. That was my base camp, and LZ Bayonet, which was right across the road from Chulai. And we got there at night, and the 5 of us was just, we're newbies, first time in country, and we're scared to death. We all congregate, everybody else sleeping. We didn't know what to do, what to think. We just talked among ourselves, find out a little about each other, because we knew if everything went right, we was all going to be going home same time. And it was an experience then too. I mean, it was doing all right. Well, one thing was I had my wife and my oldest son with me, and we rode by train until we got to Erlangen, Germany, which is outside Nuremberg. And Erlangen was it was an altogether that was like a dude ranch. Everybody was stateside duty. You had the barracks, and for the married persons, you lived off post. If your family was with you, and they wasn't expecting my family because nobody had told them that, but then I had orders stating that I had my family, and so that put us in a little bit of a rigmarole there. We had to wait for one of the housing places to open up, but altogether, the first sergeant there was very, very nice, and our CEO was a nice guy, and then in time we got one that who was he was an NCO, but then he had went to officers training school, become an officer, and he tried to be that's he thought he was God. And in fact, he was wanting to court-martial me, and he couldn't do it. First sergeant wouldn't let him, because I was an NCO, so they had to court-martial me. Couldn't do it. NCO, the top said no. He said, "I'll take him, and he'll be with me." And I stayed with top for my last year there. I was nightly. I can't even think of the word now, but CQ every night. I was armed, and get 3 days off every weekend. I said, "Sure, I'll take it, top." And so he said, "Good." And that's what I've done for my last year there. But it was altogether a different atmosphere over there. And when I left Vietnam, they were starting to that you had to have starch fatigues, shined boots, everything had to be so just like in stateside. Well, stateside every morning you'd had an inspection, and you better be dressed accordingly. And it was just something else. That's why I said I was glad when I was getting out because things were really starting to change. In the rear, well, the platoon sergeants and the platoon leaders, which were usually LTs or lieutenants, told them not to do this, because he was going to take us through a known minefield. But he wouldn't listen. He said, I'm the boss and that's the way we're going. So that night, we all packed up and was ready to go. The next morning we pulled out and we went through the village and we started across the rice fields. And I was sitting there eating breakfast, and all of a sudden, I didn't hear it at first, just seen a puff of smoke. And I said, wow, what was that? And about that time, I looked in my C ration can and there was a finger. So that stopped breakfast. Then just a couple seconds later, there was another one. And just a couple seconds later, there was another one, and everything went to a dead still. We all crisscrossed, and that means every other vehicle was pointing out. And first one over was a APC, hit a landmine. Well, he didn't hit it. There was a VC sitting in the field with a detonator, detonated them off. And he got our lieutenant. Well, there were 6 people on the APC. One lived, and that was the driver. And the only reason he lived, he went in a rice paddy, and the whole cover of the APC landed on top of him. But he was in the rice field, and it was sinking him into the ground. And it got all 5 of them. The next one was a tank, and it got 2 of them. And the TC, he became he became disabled in many ways, okay? Because it came right up through there, and he was sitting with his legs straddled, and so but they wasn't. Only one of them was killed on the tank, and then on the APC, the next one, there was all 6 of them was killed, and it was really a situation that I wish I'd have never seen. But my wife and I, when that traveling wall was in Mark Tree a couple of years ago, her and I went. And I said, I want to look for these names, and I told her their names. And she found them on the wall. And all I could do was just sit there and stare at them. And it was a really devastating. And after they cleaned up the mess, they had me to drive a VCR, vehicle recovery, and they had me drive it and haul one of the vehicles back, and it was just in pieces. The others, they called in demolition squad and blew them up there. Now that is partially the that I've seen killed. I've seen others that were, while I was on leave one time, I was at home. My father had a heart attack, and I was up there. I got noticed that a guy who was riding in the same place that I always rode, the same vehicle that I always rode was killed. And I said, how? They did not fasten the whip antenna down, and it hit a tree branch, and a mortar round came down, hit right underneath the exhaust pipe, and the shrapnel went right through his temple. He didn't know what hit him. And so while I was there, I was ordered to go to his funeral as a pallbearer, guard, armored guard, whatever. And I said, I got to get back. I don't want to do this again either, you know. But it was really, you grew up in a hurry. You became a man. I was wounded twice, and I said, you're not going to do it a third time. And I had a hatred then, from going from a nice, easy guy to a hatred. And I mean, I became hardcore. And I believe that's what would happen to a lot of guys that was in combat. They switched and they became a hardcore son of a, you know. I'll put it plain. We was going through a minefield. Our first lieutenant was on one side, and our platoon sergeant was on the other side, walking in front of our PC. PC. And as they was walking, our driver was supposed to follow the tracks, and he did, until he hit a 500-pound bomb. Now, when he hit it, the first wheel went over it. The second wheel, in between the gaps, the track come up, and that's what detonated it. And when it did, it came right up beside the track of the APC, sort of like so, and it busted open and it broke the driver's ankle. And there was 5 short timers, and I was an old timer, but they were short timers, and all of them had less than 30 days to go. This was their last field trip. And he got a busted ankle. The TC was sitting in his cupola with the 50 caliber, and he went in the airborne and landed in a tree, and he sustained a scar on this eye. The two gunners in back of me and the shotgunner, I was a shotgun up front, but they was in the back. Or I was in the back and there was one in the front. When the 260 gunners, they went over the side. I went straight up and came back down, and come find out I had concussion and 2 busted eardrums. And they said I was in shock. And so I remember standing up and looking around, and then I went back down, and that's all I can remember until I woke up in the hospital having my pants cut off of me and my boots, you know. And excuse me. And that was the first one. And the second one was the first platoon again. We went out, and we was going through the field, and we hit a bouncing Betty. And I sustained busted eardrums again, but I didn't know it at the time. And that night I went to the corpsman, and he gave me some pain pills to hold me over, and I called the headquarters that night and requested to be replaced because of the concussion had really messed up my ears. And motor pool sergeant got on there and said, no, just bear with us, Hoagie, you're going home tomorrow. Said you'll be coming in when the resupplies are submitted, your replacement be there, and you hop on that chopper and come back. You're going home. I said, okay. So I stayed up all night, and the medic gave me one too many pills, and what he was supposed to, to help ease the pain, because that pain was hard to bear. And next morning, I hopped on that chopper and came back, and they gave me my papers instead of letting me go to the dispensary. They just gave me my papers. And that night I went to the dispensary, and they said I had busted another eardrum, that in time they would heal. But the first one, I went back to the field too early, and it didn't have time to heal. And so it never did heal properly. And then the second one never did heal properly. One of them was, like I was telling you about, the guys that hit the landmine. Well, they didn't hit the landmine. The VC was sitting over there. My first actual combat fight. Then there was the little Vietnamese girl. Her mom and her done our laundry, and they would come in and pick up. Now, this was the maintenance laundry. They would come and pick up once a week, and we was going through the village on our way back to base camp, so we thought we would, different ones had their laundry done too, in the platoon by different people, so we was going to stop and get our laundry, and come to find out, the little girl had been taken captive and abused, misused, and killed, and our laundry was all shredded up, had been sliced up. So we had to get the clothes and turn them in for new ones. But there was blood on them and stuff, and it was a mess. That was a memorable time. And then my going home party. The night that I was going home the next day, we had a party over at the party hooch, and we there was a band and singers there, and we had a good time, and I was drunk, and next morning, when we loaded the plane up in Chulai, I'll never forget, not in Chulai, but in Cameron Bay. We was loaded on that plane, and the pilot, this plane is full, and the pilot comes over and says, guys, he said, just bear with us for a few minutes. He said, this runway and this airport is under attack, so bear with us. And here we are sitting on this plane, no weapons of any kind, and we all heard the pilot say, the hell with it, bear with it, guys, and he floored that thing, and we took off. And me, I hate flying. I was always airsick every time we flew, and that was a really bad one then. But those are some memories. I met some nice people over there, and been to one reunion, and I met a couple guys, and that was in. I met 5 guys. I believe it was 5 guys that were stationed there the same time I was, or around that time. And one of them was on that tank that got really butchered up. He was one of the survivors.
Oh wow!
And then I met some that was there before me and some that was there after me, but in the same unit, the same H Troop 17 Cav, and they were all very nice. All, well, as they say, we're all brothers, not only because of the same outfit, but because of where we've been and what we went through. And it's been good. We were on a night logger, closing in for the night, and I was pulling guard while the other guys on our PC were getting chow. I was pulling guard, and the TC was going to bring chow back to me. And we had a recon platoon that was out, and they was out. In fact, they was out in front of us in the woods, and so we were sitting there, and all of a sudden we hear the gunfire going off. We hear all kinds of shooting and stuff, and boy, I just started up and I started down in the rice field. And the TC, he just happened to be running, and he hopped on the rear hatch. And as I was raising it, he hopped right up, got up there, and he put on his helmet, and he said, head forward, full speed. And our CO come on there, he said, go, Hoagie. That was my nickname, was Hoagie. They said, go, Hoagie, just give her hell. And I flew over rice levees, I flew in the rice field, and we got up there, and I ducked down. And he had the TC was on his 50, you know. We didn't have nobody manned in the 60s because I left them. I mean, you know, you missed the boat, you stayed behind. And so we got there, and the recon platoon, they all made it out, and they came and got in with us. I just pulled up there, and the TC, he was shooting over their heads because we was under fire then. And so we got them all, and I just backed up, and the CO said, keep coming, Hoagie, just like you're doing. The TC, he was down in his hatch because we were taking fire, and then they were firing back too, you know, all the rest of the platoon. And so we got back. Come on, son, you're all right. And so we got back, and even with everybody else, and then we just all backed outwards, and till their rifles were out of range. But that's how I got it for heroism. The first time I was wounded, don't know how it got to my family, my father and mother and my wife and that. We don't know how it got to them, but the Red Cross had contacted them and told them that I had been wounded. And they didn't know how serious I was, and so then the Red Cross set it up for them to talk to me 2 days after I had been wounded. And they came, the CO, not the CO, but the first sergeant came and got me and said, you got a phone call here. And so he said, every time you're finished answering the question or talking, he said, just say over, and then they'll pick it up. And so we did. And I talked for about 5 minutes telling them and trying to explain to them that I'm all right, you know, just a little gun shy and hard of hearing, and I'll explain it all in the letter and stuff, so don't worry, you know, try not to worry. And so that was how that happened. That was the only time I got to make a phone call in Vietnam. Only time.
So how emotional was it to be able to actually hear their voice, to be able to talk to them?
I didn't want to. I wanted to, but I didn't. I was afraid it was going to upset them more because, see, I'm an only son, and my dad was disabled, and so I didn't want it to hurt him. Plus, he had heart trouble, and I was afraid that it was going to upset the apple cart a little bit, and so I was really afraid. But I was glad to talk with them, you know, and then that made it even harder to stay over there, you know, because you miss them and you know that they're missing you, and things now were getting bad, and so yeah, it was just one of those deals. Good. I mean, you had your choice, but a lot of people said they would rather have the other because you could warm them up and you would eat hot meals. But at the same time, if you come under fire, that hot meal wasn't doing you no good because it went everywhere while you was shooting, you know. So, but the sea ration was in a can and you set it down easy, you know. And they had good food in both of them. I mean, you just had to suffer a little bit, you know. Oh yeah, I had a lot of supplies, and if I would come up short with something, somebody always had extra of something, you know. But we all shared when we was in the field to make sure that everybody was okay, you know, like cigarettes or matches, especially because they would get wet and stuff. Socks, pants, you always took a couple extra pair with you all the time, you know, because you never knew what was going to happen. I'll tell you what, we had broke down one night in the first platoon. One of the PCs had broke down, and I had called in for resupplies, and they were sending them the next morning. They sent them, and just the first platoon was in this one area, which the second and third platoon was on the beach line, supposedly protecting us in case if we was to get attacked. Plus, we had a recon platoon out there. So when I got the torsion bar, replaced it, got that track together, we got it moving, went out on to the beach with everybody else. Well, the VC are scavengers. So they was we got in line on the beach facing where we had just broke down. And they told me, they said, Hoagie, you pull guard while we go over here and have our meeting and stuff. I said, okay, no problem. And there was 5 VC come right out of there carrying an ammo box, one of the big wooden crates. I opened fire. I did not hesitate, and I know I killed 3 of them. That is a nightmare I live with every day, killing 3 people, and it's not fun. But if my life depended on it now, I will shoot you if I have to. I mean, I won't bat an eye. But I try to treat everybody with respect. I want the same from everybody else. And if you hurt my family, look out. Especially if the tears come. If the tears come, there's no holding back then. Because I will become a different person than I was over there. I saw them, they were VCs, and I know I knocked 3 of them down. And I did not care, did not bat an eye, and by the time everybody else started shooting, they were done, you know. But the recon found them, and they were dead. I mean, all 5 of them, but they said the first 3 were the worst ones, which I shot them with 50 caliber machine gun, and I mean, I could see where the tracers were going, and I just kept on shooting. I knew you was going to hit on that. I knew it.
It's okay if you don't want to answer.
No, I'm going to answer it. But when we came home, we had no idea what was going on. And before we could unboard the plane, the police, MPs and police stepped on the plane and said, guys, this is the National Vietnam Protest Day. You will be under guard at all times. Do not touch them. If they touch you, said kill them. And that's the way it was. Don't touch them. And each one went with armed guard to where they was to go. And they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Chicago, Illinois, the O'Hare Airport. I said, come on, we got just a couple minutes to get there. And we ran right through the protesters. They was in the airport at this time. We ran right through them, and other cops was pushing them back. We got on the plane, and I landed in O'Hare. And I had when you come back from Vietnam, you land in Fort Lewis, Washington, and you get to take a hot shower. And you get all the soap you need, shampoo, scrub yourself clean. You're getting a tailor-made uniform. I mean, they have everything. Your medals on there, your rank, spit shine boots, everything. When I landed in Chicago, The 2 armed guards said, "This is as far as we can go. You're on your own from here to the bus." The bus was going to take me to Hammond, Indiana. They said, "Don't touch them. If you do, then they can get you for assault. But if they touch you, we will be right there. We have your back." I said, "Oh man, this is going to be hell." So I had to travel a good distance to get to the bus. And when I did, that I was hit with rotten eggs, rotten tomatoes, and there was this one girl come up and spit right in my face, and I couldn't do a thing except keep walking. They ruined my new uniform. That hurt me the worst, that I was treated this way, that we were called baby killers, but they didn't know why we were called baby killers. That's just like these people today that arm themselves and they go in and pull a bomb on everybody. That's the same way the Vietnam treated these little kids. These kids wouldn't raise their hand up no higher than this, and when they did, they were shot. And you open up their shirt, and there was hand grenades all around them. If they raised their hand, they're going to take you and a bunch of other people down with them. That's where we got the name of baby killer. And I had never done it, but I seen my LT do it. And the kid was right there in front of me too when they shot him. But the people treated me very, very bad. And to this day, now I honor all veterans, I do. But I will not go to a ticker tape parade. My oldest son was in Desert Storm, the 2nd Marine Division out of Little Rock. They went to Desert Storm, no ticker tape parade. He said, "Dad, when we come back, we didn't get a ticker tape parade like we had to give the engineers." But he went out to give the engineers one because of his kids had friends that their dads were leaving, so they was going to go with their friends and stuff. And he said, "I got home and I got drunk." And he said, "When I got drunk, I started beating holes in the door and in the wall because of the fact, the way he was treated and the way these guys were treated now, you know." And I said, and he told me, he said, "I know what you went through now." When I was discharged from Germany, I went to Norfolk, Virginia. This time I had 2 little babies and my wife. Well, I got discharged, and I told her then, I said, "Hold on, just a minute." We had our suitcases. I said, "Hold on." I went in the restroom. I changed into civilian clothes. I was not going to have what happened to me from Vietnam happen to my wife and kids at that time. And so we went. There was no disturbance at all. And we landed in Memphis Airport and came on to Marmaduke and been here. I've been here since 1989. That conflict was spreading. You know, Korea is divided because of communism. Communism was taken over, and the people didn't want communism. The people wanted the freedom. Koreans were even fighting in the Vietnam War, and so the people were going. The Americans were over there, the French were over there, the Australians were over there. They was all there helping them against communism. Communism was a disease that was spreading. And the people didn't understand. The people didn't want to understand. And so a lot of them defected up to Canada, which you can't do that now, but they did back in that time. They didn't want to go. They didn't see the need of us going. They don't know why we were going. Freedom. Freedom is a big word, and it does not come cheap. Took a couple weeks to calm down and to find work, and then finally found work. I was living down here. This was in 1973. Of all things, I was hauling hay, and I had to provide for my family, you know. I hauled hay, and then I was lucky enough to get on Emerson for 2 years, and then in 1977, 76, something like that, 77, we moved back to Hammond, and there again, I was lucky enough to get on at a place called Standard Railway Products, which made parts for boxcars and train cars. I worked there till 1980, and I said, I can't take this stress up here no more. I took 2.5 years of nighttime college at Purdue University, and I wrote a play, and it was produced, and I said, that's it, I got to get out of here. So I came back here, been here ever since 1980. 1980, I worked for John Miles out in Mounds for 1 year. And then after that, I had my own business, carpenter work, and I built that. A lot of our furniture in this house I built. And I was a carpenter, cabinet maker, home improvement. And I mean home improvement. I done electrical, I done plumbing, I done siding, whatever it would take to make a living. And I made a living. I didn't get rich by no means. Her and I have been married for 20 years, a little over 20 years. A couple months over. But now I was forced into retirement, and enjoy it. I tried. Like me, they moved around, they changed their phone numbers. I do have some emails of the guys that was in service with me, and I eventually am going to get in touch with them. The reunion has helped me get in touch with some, and I've met a couple of them from the reunion. And when you spend a lot of time going to and from the doctors, you can't get your head straight, you know. And but I do intend to keep up with some of them. I asked about them if anybody had seen them, and different ones, they say they've seen different ones, or like I said earlier, they had deceased. And but strangely enough, one of the guys that was over there in Vietnam with, Jimmy Carr, a character out of California, a tunnel rat. And he went on and on about how he was getting out of this man's army. He couldn't handle it, it ain't no good, and this and that. And it was a year and a half later, I was in Germany at this time, and this guy comes in there, and I said, excuse me. He said, huh? He said, Hoagie. I said, Jimmy Carr. I said, what are you doing back in? He said, I couldn't find no work. He said, I had to do something, so he said, I re-enlisted like a dummy. And he said, they sent me over here. I said, you'll like it. And that was the only one that I had ever run across from Vietnam. Yes, I joined. I'm a life member of the Disabled American Veterans. I joined the VFW for 1 year, joined the American Legion for 1 year, and I'm a life member of the Military Order of Police, Purple Heart. And that I continue to go to meetings and stuff. Disabled American Veterans, I don't know where they meet or what they do or anything, except they do help you if you need help. That's what I know. When my oldest son, we found out he was going to Desert Storm, I tried to re-enlist. I hope this is answering your question. To keep him from going, I was willing to go. I could not go because of my handicaps, my disabilities. And as far as my attitude towards the military, no. I still appreciate all veterans because I learned a lot while I was in the military. I learned what it was about, and I keep up with the National Geographic or national politics as to what's going on with the country, and you know. I heard it, I'm sure you heard it time and time again. When Clinton was in office, why didn't they just go in and kill Hussein the first time instead of having to go back there? And since they went back there, they've not finished it. And so they need to just go in, get it over with, or else everybody come back home and stay here and defend this country, because we're having trouble here now. Well, I grew up. I went in the service as a young kid, and not knowing what to expect. And it was the first time I'd really actually been away from home in a different state where there was no relatives. And so I had to learn to grow up. And I did that. And as time went on, I became more and more independent because of what I had learned over in the military. I started using my skills and everything on the outside, and so I became a better person that way. I make sure all the doors are locked. I tell the teachers, if anything should happen, I got your back. I said, I'll take a bullet for you anytime. I said, I got your back. And they look at me and they say, are you crazy? I said, no. I said, I've been there, done that. It doesn't matter. You help my kids. Jerry Lewis's telethon, he always says his kids. That's what I call them over there at the primary school. I said, these are my kids. When they get out of that car, they're mine. They put me down at one end of this walkway. I'm down here at this end playing music, old-time rock and roll, and it's a mixture, having a great time dancing. They got the teachers dancing, the kids are dancing. They'll walk all the way from that end, all the way down to Mr. Mickey just to get a hug. Now, they know that I'm there for them. They'll walk right by the teacher. I'm going to see Mr. Mickey. I'm going to see Mr. Mickey. Go right ahead. And they can't understand why, but they have developed that the kids care. They know I'm there for them. That's the way the police officers, Vietnam veterans, I'm there for them too. If they need me, I'll be there. I just like to say thank you for your service, all, past, present, and future. Thank you for your service. Continue the fight.
Hello, and thank you for watching Arkansas Valor presented by T-Ward Media. I am so excited and so happy to be able to bring you these stories of our Arkansas veterans who have sacrificed so much for you and for me. to be able to share their experiences, otherwise not found in textbooks or history books even, but for them to share those stories with us so that we can pass them on to future generations, so that they may understand the sacrifices that they made for our freedoms. I am so happy to be able to extend this opportunity to you and everyone else who takes part in the Arkansas Valor experience to share these stories with those of the ones you love and to share them with the veterans in your families. And when you share them, if they too want to talk about their experiences, we invite you to contact us at the information below. contact@twordmedia.com. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and we hope to talk to you soon.